Do you want to stop being a pushover? Do you want people to take you more seriously? And do you want to become a man who is treated with respect, who is seen as an authority? Do you sometimes feel that you lack the ability to stand up for yourself? And do you maybe feel like you are kind of surrounded by the wrong kind of people? Like you'd like to be surrounded by excellent people, by people who push you and uplift you, but you tend to be surrounded by toxic people? If that's the case, you need to listen to this podcast episode. Because the way you communicate as a man makes a huge difference to how other people perceive you and whether they respect you or not, whether they see you as a man or not. In the last episode, we already talked about how one of the ways in which men nowadays were basically missing a way to go from boy to man. Like we don't have really elders, we don't have a tradition of elders who teach us the ways, essentially. And most of us stay stuck in an immature mode in almost all aspects of our lives. And we talked about one of those aspects, which is communication. The way you communicate. Most people communicate in a super immature way, and it causes all kinds of problems. So I shared a specific way to communicate, a specific way to learn communicating, that it makes the difference between how a boy communicates and how a mature, well-developed man communicates. And today we're continuing with that topic because on the last episode, I got a similar question several times, and you guys absolutely rightfully asked this. We're talking about how to create deep connections with people and how to communicate really authentically and vulnerably. And the question was like, well, hold on. Am I supposed to communicate like this with everyone? Like, what about people who don't deserve my trust? What about people who've maybe betrayed my trust in the past? What then? And that's absolutely right. It's absolutely right to ask that. This technique that we talked about for forging deep connections with other people is not for everyone. That's how you communicate with people who have earned your trust, and it's how you communicate with people who you want to create a deeper connection with. And of course, there's going to be other people, maybe, work colleagues or, I don't know, people that you're around, but you don't like them very much, where you're going to keep them at arm's length. But the important thing is that you have a choice, whereas most of us don't know how to create depth. And so by default, we find ourselves feeling kind of lonely. So today, let's build on this. And there's another side to this, like the flip side to this deep, authentic communication is having healthy boundaries. This is the other part of showing up as a mature man. And it's the other side of the equation. If you combine both of these, the ability to create depth in communication and the ability to have healthy boundaries, that makes you in your communication appear mature. It gives you authority. It makes people respect you more, and it makes you a more desirable man. This part about having healthy boundaries is also the part that protects you from toxic people, from people who aren't trustworthy, from people who are a negative influence on your life. This is a really important skill, and it really is a skill. The thing is, I almost forgot about this because I am surrounded by amazing people, and I sometimes forget that that's not normal. And the fact that I'm surrounded by all these amazing people, by the way, is not a coincidence. It's not luck. It is a consequence of communicating in the way that I'm teaching here. And, I had to figure this stuff out for myself because no one taught me. Like I said, I'm talking about us here when I say, nobody teaches us this stuff. We're all stuck in an immature mode. I wish someone had told me this. They didn't. I had to find this stuff out the hard way. And I'm here talking about it because I want to pass it on to you. This is super valuable and changes your life so much. So I'll get back to that at the end about how it ends up affecting your life and the people you attract around yourself. But first, let's get into the details. So like I said, it's about healthy boundaries. How do you establish and enforce healthy boundaries? And let me give it to you right away. Here's the sauce. Okay, this is the important idea. What does it mean to have healthy boundaries? It means respecting yourself and others equally. Okay, that's what it comes down to. Respecting yourself and others equally. So then let's examine that more deeply. What does it mean to respect someone? What does it mean to respect yourself and others? I think the term respect is misused quite often. It is used in kind of a fearful context, almost like you have to defend your reputation or something. And, if someone says something disrespectful to you, you have to shout at them or intimidate them or something like that, right? There's often this kind of, let's say the macho alpha male kind of idea of respect, which kind of backfires because it is a fear response. So that's not what I'm talking about. I just want to put that out there. If that is the image it triggers for you when I say respect. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm actually talking about is that you essentially take yourself and others seriously as like a fully formed person, and you don't ignore yourself, and you also don't overly identify with other people. So to explain this, let me just give an example. So let's say I'm meeting someone I haven't met before, we have a conversation, and they're standing really close to me, right? They're like right up in my face. And I notice it makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like, this is my private space, right? Why is this person so close? I don't feel good. And I notice that, and respecting myself and having healthy boundaries means I notice this discomfort and I say something about it. I say, hey, do you mind, backing off a little bit? I'm not quite comfortable with you standing this close. And it's not an accusation. I'm not saying you're wrong for this. I'm not being awkward about it and like trying to slowly back away, because if you've ever been in this situation, what happens? The other person just follows you, right? So I'm not being awkward about it. I'm just noticing, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. And they're just, hey, do you mind taking a step back? Okay, that's more comfortable for me. That's all, right? It's not a big deal. It's not an accusation. I am simply noticing I have a need here. This would make me feel more comfortable. I'm voicing it, and that's it. Unhealthy boundaries or no boundaries in this situation would be that I get uncomfortable, but I don't take myself seriously. So I go, oh, I must be wrong. I don't have the right to tell this person to take a step back. I simply assume that, oh, I must be wrong. If they want to be this close and I don't, I'm sure they're right and I'm wrong. Or another version of unhealthy boundaries is I start making assumptions. I start assuming, oh, this person knows that he's making me uncomfortable. He's up in my face on purpose. He's trying to intimidate me. This is maybe a manipulation tactic. He wants to make me uncomfortable. And then maybe I start spinning a story about, oh, he wants whatever. He wants something from me, or he wants to intimidate me, or whatever, right? And I end up making all these assumptions without voicing anything. And I end up disrespecting the other person. I'm still feeling uncomfortable. And I mean, basically, it can only have negative consequences, right? It's going to be weird. And now I'm assuming that I have this enemy, even though who knows what's going on. And then another version of unhealthy boundaries is to basically be aggressive right away. It's yo, back off, man, right? It's like, I'm almost assuming that this is a form of aggression because I feel uncomfortable. And I'm like defending myself right away, even though I actually don't even know what the situation is yet. So all of those are examples of unhealthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries, once again, is just noticing I'm not feeling comfortable and just voicing it without accusations, without aggression. Now, what happens next? The other person tells me, I'm standing this close because I'm hard of hearing. If I take a step back, I'm not going to be able to hear what you say. So right away, see why healthy boundaries are so important. Like if I'm being aggressive, or if I don't say anything and start making assumptions, I don't even know what's going on. I don't even know that the other person actually has a good reason for standing this close. And now for the other person, healthy boundaries is expressing that again without accusation. They're saying, oh, by the way, you don't know this about me. I don't hear well. So that's why I'm standing this close. They're not accusing me of being insensitive or anything like that. They're not making apologies. They're just explaining, here's what's going on, right? So now we're both doing the healthy boundaries thing. Now, the next thing for me is to take this other person seriously, just as I take myself seriously. And now we get to figure out, well, what works for both of us? And maybe I get to say, okay, how about you take half a step back, and I'll make sure to speak really loudly and really clearly. Let's try that, right? It's like I'm going to say something and make sure I'm not mumbling. And see, does this work for both of us? Okay, cool. Because I can make an effort to speak a bit more loudly, and you can make an effort to give me a little bit of space, and this can work for both of us. So that's one example of what healthy boundaries looks like, right? I'm taking my own needs seriously. I'm taking the other person's needs seriously, and I'm communicating without assumptions, without being defensive, without being aggressive. Now think about this. Do you see how this makes a huge difference to how you show up in other people's perception? Because if you don't have healthy boundaries, even in this simple example, what's going to happen if I don't say anything and I just feel uncomfortable? Well, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. My body language is probably going to show it. It's going to be all awkward. The other person is going to notice like something's off, and they might think, oh, does he not like me? What am I doing wrong? They don't know why I'm feeling uncomfortable. Now they maybe start making assumptions. I maybe make assumptions about why is this person so close to me? The other person's making assumptions. Why is he so awkward? And this does not create a good impression. And it creates this kind of tension in the conversation. And it doesn't lay a foundation. So you're not making a good impression. You're not making a powerful impression on this other person. But also, it doesn't lay the foundation for friendship, for partnership, for collaboration. It's just going to be like this unpleasant, oh, I don't know, what was that? And then you try to escape. And again, think about it for a moment. This is what most people do most of the time, right? They'll be complaining about, oh, this creepy dude was standing too close to me. What did you do about it? Nothing. Okay, so you just stood there and took it and then you ran away. Now, in order to do this, in order to have healthy boundaries and enforce them in a healthy way, you first have to notice, okay? So I gave a really simple example where I'm noticing an effect something has on me. It's like, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And that's the first thing you have to notice. You have to notice when someone says something that is hurtful to you, when you feel like someone is like violating maybe your privacy or violating a boundary or something. Someone is doing something that basically makes you feel uncomfortable, makes you feel bad, makes you feel sad, makes you feel hurt. You notice, and then you do something about it in a mature way. And let's take it one step further. As a man, you should have values. You should be clear about what are my values, and you should defend those values. And that's part of having healthy boundaries. And here's what I mean. Depending on what a boundary violation looks like, there can be very different levels of response to that. So the example I gave is a really harmless one. Someone standing a bit close to me. And it could be something like he's hard of hearing. It could also just be like, my sense of personal space is different than this other person's sense of personal space. That's all it is, right? But again, then we can just easily make a compromise and it's all good. And in this case, it's like you just communicate about it, right? And if you meet the same person next time and again, they come too close, you just remind them, hey, can you take a step back? Yeah, gotcha. Okay. No problem, right? It's no problem. But what about other boundary violations? What if someone lies to you? You find out someone lied to you, maybe in order to get something from you or for whatever reason. That's a more serious violation. What do most people do in this situation? Well, most people are cowards in a situation like this. And they'll basically start gossiping behind that person's back, right? I tell my friends, oh, this person lied to me. I start complaining about that person. Maybe start projecting all kinds of stuff. Oh, I knew I wasn't trustworthy, blah, 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 right? Okay, that's super cowardly. What most people don't do, the first thing you need to do is like confront that person. Okay, I found out that a friend of mine lied to me. I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. I'm going to bring it up. Look, here's what I learned. Here's what it looks like. To me, it looks like you lied to me in order to get something from me. Now, okay, explain yourself basically. And again, without immediately being defensive or aggressive or anything like that, you just go, here are the facts. Okay. It looks to me like you lied to me. I don't want to be lied to. This is who you are. I can't trust you. But first of all, I'm going to give you a chance to explain yourself because there's always a possibility there's some misunderstanding. So don't bullshit me here, but just explain yourself. And in this case, especially if it's a relatively harmless lie, then you can essentially just like clarify, listen, it's important to me that we're honest with each other. I'm going to be honest with you and I need you to be honest with me. And if not, I don't want to have anything to do with you, right? It's like you can't be in my friend group essentially, right? I'm not going to want to hang out with you. I'm not going to want to talk to you. I don't want you around if I can't trust you. So does that make sense to you? Like, can we come to an agreement that we're going to be honest with each other? And for me, something like this, especially like a relatively harmless lie, would be kind of a 3 strikes and you're out type of deal, right? It's like it happens the first time, we have the conversation. It happens the second time, you're like, listen, I'm serious about what I talked about last time, right? It's like, if you do this again, I'm going to cut you out. And then if they do it again, you're just like, listen, I don't spend time with people I can't trust. Goodbye, basically. So take a moment to think about what I'm explaining here. This is the difference between handling it in a mature way and having healthy boundaries versus going behind other people's back, gossiping, just taking it, right? Someone's constantly lying to you and you're kind of just letting them violate you and you're mad at them and you build up resentment, but you don't say anything, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, the thing I'm explaining here about having healthy boundaries makes you a much more respectable person. It makes you a more authoritative person. It makes you someone that people take more seriously, and it increases your life quality very, very significantly if you keep enforcing boundaries like that in your life. Now, let me give you a third example. Example number 3. This is a personal boundary I have. Threats, and especially threats of violence. Okay, so if someone is angry at me and they start making threats, that's for me immediately, hold on, stop right there. I'm hearing you make a threat. I don't tolerate that at all. And if it's a threat of violence, if someone gets angry at me and they threaten violence, it's an immediate red flag. This is for me, again, like, stop whatever you're doing. Listen, one of 2 things is going to happen. You just threaten me with violence. We're either going to have a fight right now. You're either going to deliver on your threat of violence right now or you're leaving. That's it. This is a 1 strike and you're out, right? I have 0 tolerance for people threatening violence. I don't care how mad you are at me. If you threaten violence, you're out of my life.
Now, those are personal examples. I wanted to show that there's different levels of boundary violations and different responses to them, right? And I have my reasons for why, for example, I have zero tolerance for people threatening violence. And this is just an example of I'm clear about what my values are, and I'm clear about when I'm going to be like very gentle and patient in enforcing my boundaries and when I'm going to have zero tolerance. And in each case, I'm going to handle it with total clarity and as maturely as possible. This is something I recommend that you think about, maybe even write about. The question, what are your boundaries? What are boundaries that you want to set, and how are you going to enforce those boundaries? Like, be clear about your values. Don't wait for someone to trample all over you and then decide, oh, I guess this is a boundary, right? This is one level more mature. It's already more mature than most people are if you just notice people making you feel uncomfortable or hurt or sad or whatever, and then enforce a boundary. Another level more mature is to know in advance. What are my values? What are my boundaries? How am I going to respond if someone does this? So now you know how it's done. You know how to have healthy boundaries. You can do this exercise to prepare yourself, but also start noticing it and start doing it in small ways. Usually the easiest way to start is doing it in small ways. So point out to someone when you're slightly uncomfortable to get used to enforce a soft boundary in a gentle way. Because if you just go straight to, the most extreme boundary violations, if you've never practiced it before, that's going to be difficult. So use opportunities of people like crossing your boundaries in small ways as a way to practice that, like really gently and maturely without escalating the situation. Simply enforce your boundaries. And you'll see that this will change how people treat you and how they see you. If you make a habit of this is going to change your life very significantly, because it's going to change not only how the people who are around you treat you, but it's going to change the kind of person you have around you in the first place. If you find yourself in a situation where you have lots of toxic relationships, where you have lots of people around you who, are often unkind to you or don't take you seriously or are toxic, basically, then what will happen is once you start enforcing boundaries, some of them will get very mad at you and you will have to cut them out of your life. And yes, that's sometimes necessary. Sometimes you're in a situation where just like, listen, I can't put up with this. And I've given you the warning. I've given you the repeat warning. And I have to get rid of this. I don't want this person in my life who keeps lying to me, who keeps betraying my trust, this kind of thing, right? But in most cases, it's not actually that dramatic. It's not that you have a lot of kind of dramatic separations and you're cutting people out of your life and so on. Like for most people, what will happen is that the people in your life will start treating you differently. You'll start to have better relationships with the better people in your life. And some people will kind of just drift away. You actually, in my experience, you rarely have to like cut ties in like a harsh way. Because guess what? Like people who are kind of toxic and immature don't like mature people. They don't like hanging out with well-developed, mature, smart people. It's just like, maybe you've noticed this. Okay, you're listening to this podcast. You're probably a fairly ambitious person, right? You want to improve yourself. You've probably noticed that there's a certain type of person, they don't like ambitious people. Let's say lazy people who are in victim mode. They don't like ambitious people. They don't like to be around ambitious people. Guess who likes to be around ambitious people? Other ambitious people. This brings me back to what I said in the beginning. The situation I find myself in is that I am surrounded by absolutely amazing people. Like I have so many friends who are smart and kind and caring and who are trustworthy and who are ambitious, and they're just amazing people. And why is that? Did I luck out, right? Did I just by pure chance meet all these cool people? No, it's because I started communicating in the way that I've been explaining in this episode and the previous episode, and it attracts that kind of person. That's the kind of person who finds you and then sticks around. And people who are, gossipy and shallow and difficult and toxic, they don't like me, right? So if I meet them, they are quickly like repelled. And yeah, maybe some of them talk shit about me behind my back or whatever, because yeah, some people are going to dislike you when you start enforcing boundaries, right? But who cares? You end up attracting all the right people by becoming that person yourself. Okay, so the last episode and this episode, these are like the two sides of the coin of how to communicate in an emotionally mature way that makes you appear with more authority, and it makes you more desirable and makes you attract better people to your life. This is the kind of stuff that I wish someone had taught me like 20 or 30 years ago. That would have been great. But anyway, I did eventually learn, and I'm glad that I can pass it on. So try this out. This will make a huge difference in your life. And if you have other questions about this, let me know. You can leave a comment. You can also leave a voice message. There's a link here where you can get to the podcast page. You can just subscribe to the podcast on your podcast listening app. You can also click a link to leave a voice message. And of course, if you appreciate the content that I'm putting out, you can help me by helping me reach more people with this. I really want to get this message out to as many people as possible. And the best way you can help me do that is by just engaging with this. Like leave a review, leave a comment, hit the like button, hit the whatever star, favorite, bookmark, whatever platform you're watching this on, right? Just engage with the content because that tells the algorithm to show it to more people. And of course, the best thing you can do for yourself and the world is try these things out and start having a positive influence on everyone around you simply by becoming a better man. With that, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.